Привет, друзья! Как дела? My name is Fedor, and today we'll take care of all of your problems in this video. If you ever encounter any problem in the Russian language, and I'll talk about specific ones, this video will have the answer. So save this one and come back to it whenever you feel like you're not making enough progress, you cannot understand others, you keep on making mistakes that you have learned about like months ago. Any issue in the Russian language that stops you from getting to fluency will be answered today. All of the problems in the Russian language deal with 5 root problems, deep root problems that we have to address. And one of the problems that you have will be answered by one of these roots. In our current day and age of AI learning and a lot of different materials, we are always covered on the foundational level. The foundational level is perfect, but the deep causes are almost never addressed. So let's address them today, starting with the first one. I cannot actively speak. I understand when people talk to me, but when it's my turn to speak, I cannot do it. The issue here is that your knowledge, and you've been learning for months or maybe years, your knowledge is mostly passive and not active. That's why you keep translating in your head. That's why you cannot speak when others speak to you. That's why you keep making mistakes in the same grammar rules that you have drilled before. That's because all of your knowledge has been passive. What's the solution? How can you get rid of that? Well, first and foremost, get rid of the crutches. You keep on relying on translators, on subtitles when you're watching movies. You have something to fall back on. Your back is not against the wall. You have to simulate like your back is against the wall. In fact, that's how I learned English. I came to the United States for me to study, go to school. Nobody spoke Russian to me. I had no other way but to speak English. So I had my back against the wall. So you need to simply simulate that state. How do you do that? Well, first and foremost, you need to start talking about the things that you see without any help. Let's say, right now I'm sitting in front of the camera. I can start describing things that I see around me. Это микрофон, это футболка, это ноутбук, это камера. Something very basic. I just pointed at 4 different objects and I named them. I didn't look up these words. I didn't check my sentences. I didn't check any of that. I just simply described what I could. The next step is going to be describing it better. Это микрофон для записи. Это черная футболка. Это мой ноутбук. Это хорошая камера. So now I've added some more details to what I'm saying. And so with more of that practice where you don't have any crutches, any translators, you will naturally go for more and more difficult things. And eventually your overall knowledge will become active because you are now producing it. You're now using your knowledge and not just constantly consuming more and more and more. Okay, bring more videos. Load a truck of videos my way. I will watch them all. No, now it's time for you to produce. This might feel like a slow down of the pace because you're not learning anything new. And that's the point. Enough of the new information. You have had enough of information built up that is all theory and it's not practical. Now it's time to stop with the new information and take care of the existing knowledge that you have and making it active. Same goes for your grammar. If you're making mistakes in the same things that you've been learning, you have not put it into this automatic stage where when you use the grammar rule, you don't think about it. Let's say if you're speaking to me right now one-on-one and you continue to think about the cases, usage, or the prefixes, or the conjugation, whatever other grammar topic you have, you will slow down. You will think about the endings for like 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and our conversation will be lost. The conversation kind of base will be lost because you're going to be taking such long pauses. You cannot be doing that in a conversation. So what you have to do, I'm a big fan of just drilling exercises. Because Russian grammar is all about patterns. When you see a pattern, you say it. When you see this pattern, you say it. So the more exercises you do, the more you challenge your production of those rules and not the theory knowledge, the better it's going to be when you're speaking to a person. Does that mean that you're going to be perfect tomorrow? No. It takes practice. It takes time, but it's better to switch from consuming new stuff to start producing it now and making your knowledge active. If you need help with that, BeFluent Camp is right for you. It's our 8-week intensive course where we force all of our students to put the things that we have learned throughout the camp to practice, so that when the time comes when a native speaks to them, they're ready. And we have a beginner course, intermediate, and advanced. Depending on your level, you will be put in one of these groups, and each group will work on something specific, but the overall theme is empowering you guys to speak Russian better. We are starting in 2 days from the published date of this video. You can check out the starting date with the link in the description, but we do these camps twice a year. So if you're watching this video later, you can find the closest start date with the link below. I'll be the one teaching all of you, and let's have some fun. Let's learn Russian together. The second root problem is that you have too much of the textbook Russian and not enough of the real Russian. The problems that stem from this is you can understand your teacher or a YouTube video that you're watching, but when a native speaks, it's done. I cannot understand anything. Or when I learn my words in my vocabulary set, it's not the words that natives are using. That's a real deep issue of just simply wrong kind of input. You are being too comfortable by only watching or doing things that feel good or feel easy. You have to slowly transition to the native type listening, native type words, native vocabulary. How do you do that? Well, let's say your start is the textbook Russian. You probably are right now listening to learners' materials, slow stories, maybe some other formats that are made for learners. We have to transition to you understanding natural Russian speech. Just jumping into the natural speech is kind of a long shot. You're not going to really get it. So slowly start making it more and more difficult. Transition to listening to learners' podcasts that are still monologues of people, but simplified. Once that's comfortable, move on to Russian native content. In other words, the Russian content that's made for Russians, not for learners, with subtitles. It can be a movie, it can be a cartoon, it can be an interview, doesn't matter, where you can supplement your lack of listening or vocabulary with the words on the screen. Because for the most part, our reading is much better than our listening. Okay? So the reading part of the subtitles will help a whole lot. And then the final step will be just watching native content without any support. At each stage, you will struggle at first. At first, it will be difficult. But the more comfort you get within each category, that's the sign that you're ready to move on. And you don't get better at this root problem by listening to a lot of things, like 50 different genres of podcasts and different... No, you listen to one individual thing over and over and over again. You don't improve by going wider. You improve here by going deeper and studying something more meticulously with a bit of a magnifying glass and understanding every detail. Let's say if you're watching a certain, let's say, music video, right, that you enjoy the music of and you want to understand the lyrics, don't just listen to that artist and all of their songs. Listen to one song, but gain deeper understanding of every single word they use, the way they pronounce it, etc. The third root problem is lack of a system. Here you are experiencing things like a plateau. I'm not making any progress. I've been learning Russian for a long time. I still cannot speak. What's going on? I finished Duolingo. I finished some other apps. I still can't speak. Here is a lack of a good system. Sometimes when people learn Russian, they have a goal. I want to be fluent in Russian. I want to be freely speaking Russian, all of that. That's a great skill to have, but it's a bad goal. Because anything you do will feel like you're making progress. Oh, I've watched 50 music videos this week. Okay, I listened to a podcast on my way to work, even though I was checked out and was looking around and I was not really paying attention. Anything you do will fit into, oh, I'm getting to fluency. Make the goals shorter. Make the goals more tangible. Let's say you are now where you are and you are not satisfied with your progress. Instead of saying, I want to be fluent in Russian, say, okay, next month, let's say, by the 1st of next month, right? I want to speak about my job perfectly. Okay, the way I describe it in English, I want to be able to do that in Russian. Okay, how do we do that? Okay, let me write the text in English first. What would I say? Do I know all of these words that I just wrote down in Russian? No. Okay, let me learn that. Okay, I've used this. If I am late to work, then I'll be fired. I use the if. How do I say if? Okay, that's a grammar rule that I have to learn. It's an if clause rule. So you start with a goal that's more tangible. And you won't ever have a lack of progress if, let's say, every month you cover a new topic. This month you cover a work topic, next month you cover nature topic, then it's food, and every time you learn something new. But it's not even the topics that you learn that are important, which they are, but it's also the connecting words, right? So it's how do you tell a story? How do you say, at first I did this and then I did that? And slowly but surely you will cover a good base, let's say of the basics first, then the intermediate level, then the advanced level. And so instead of having this higher goal that's bigger, reduce the goals and you have something more tangible to measure your own efforts against. Like I said, if your goal is too wide, anything will fit. But if your goal is to speak about your job better, listening to podcasts won't help, right? So you will be wasting less time. And sometimes, of course, in our day and age, when there's so much content online, so many memes, so many TV shows to watch, so many podcasts for learners, for natives, there's so much stuff that you can do that it feels like, okay, I have to watch it all for me to just passively absorb all this information and then I'll be fluent. That's not how fluency develops. We have to be more meticulous and more precise with our approach. And so how that this route helps, let's move on to the next. The next route is fear and psychology. This is the biggest one in my opinion because you can be perfect in the Russian language, but if you don't think of yourself as being perfect, you will still be afraid to speak. I'm sure that you guys know a person or two that they are visually stunning, but they don't think of themselves as such. And so them being self-confident ruins the beauty of their physical appearance. Same thing here. If your physical appearance of your Russian is perfect, but your self-esteem is low, you'll be always second-guessing yourself, pausing after every word, apologizing, not saying the things right. But we have to deal with this root cause for us to liberate ourselves. So, how do you start being afraid of speaking? And when natives switch to English with you as soon as they hear your accent, how do you tell them, no, let's stay on the Russian language, let's not switch back? How do you do that? Well, first and foremost, you have to lower the risk for yourself. If every time that you speak, you are again kind of jumping in a pool, hoping to swim, that will be traumatic. You have to lower the stakes. First, if you're afraid of speaking to natives, start texting them. Where you have more time to think about your answer, you can look up your answer, you can think about it, and then send them the message. Once you are comfortable with that and you don't have any problems, you move on to recording a voice recording. If you know of any Russians love voice recordings, so you can record your answer as many times as you like. And if you don't like the way you sound, you can erase it and do it again and again and again. When you're speaking to a person, you cannot erase what you are saying. So you lower the stakes until eventually you meet with them face to face. Maybe also a step before that can be a conversation over the phone call because you're not physically present with them. So that can be also a crutch there as well. But you slowly lower the stakes. Second thing, you learn the rescue phrases. Like, извините, я не понял. Повторите еще раз, пожалуйста. You learn those things where you misunderstand something that it doesn't become an issue. Imagine if you don't know how to say, excuse me, say it again, you'll be like, and your stuttering creates that awkward moment even more. So now it's even worse of a problem. So you have to simply be okay with the fact that, okay, for now, I'm not perfect yet. It's okay for me to ask for them to repeat. I respect myself. I respect them. I simply didn't understand. Me asking for a follow-up is not that big of a deal. So when you ask them for a follow-up, the conversation can still continue versus it being cut off from this awkward moment. So you learn that rescue thing so you can fall back on that. But majorly with this, more generally, I think, with this problem is that people think of mistakes as something like a failure. Mistakes in language learning is information. It's information for us to use to improve. Okay, I had a hard time speaking to them about food. Let me learn some food vocabulary. Let me practice some phrases. That's information. That's not failure. Because you cannot expect them, a native speaker, who have been speaking this native language and they grew up with it and they know the world through their native language, for you to be on the same level as them. It's simply unfair. So you are taking a step actually toward their culture and toward their language. They'll respect that in return. So they'll give you some room for error, and it's okay for you two to exchange sometimes imperfectly. And so you will use this information of mistakes to move forward, to get better. Without mistakes, no one has ever learned a second language. And this last root, if you get rid of all the problems that we have talked about before, you can still hit a wall. And that's no life practice. It's when you're speaking Russian behind your computer, just sitting there flipping through your flashcards on your phone and never speaking to anyone. You might potentially have issues that you simply don't know about yet. So start speaking to someone today. Find a language exchange partner online. There's many different apps for that. Find a teacher that you can speak to. Find someone where you can exchange the Russian language, where you can use your Russian. Even if you have a family, maybe let's say you are married to a Russian family, Russian-speaking family, you may still be at a loss over actual practice because when you speak to them, they speak to you full speed at 100%. You need somebody to speak to you at 10%, at 5%. That can be a language exchange partner. That can be a teacher because your father-in-law doesn't have the patience for him to dumb down his Russian to talk to you, for you to learn. He wants to talk about real stuff, right? So you need to find someone who will match your learning needs. And that can be through teachers, through many different resources online. Sometimes even today, you can speak with AI helpers. Sometimes they're okay for just like basic level, like I've talked about before. It'll be the surface level speaking, but it's better than nothing. In fact, what you can also do is just speak to yourself. It's still speaking, it's still pronunciation, it's still using words, it's still making sentences. It may not be a real person, but still it's better than nothing. In other words, even if you're not in an environment of Russian-speaking country, you need to create that for yourself. Stop listening to your English music, listen to Russian music and things like that. So you can manufacture this environment for your learning to accelerate, to go faster. But that is all 5 root problems. If you are ever in trouble, if you ever have any problems with Russian language, check out this video and the answer will be here. And I'm waiting for all of you guys over at BFluent Camp. Join us, learn with us. We're going to have a lot of fun together and you will learn a whole lot and you will take care of these root problems that we have talked about today. That is all. See you all there or keep on watching our YouTube videos with this next one. It's up to you.